It was very interesting. I started out with ONDAC, Oklahoma Narcotics and Drug Abuse Commission. From there, they merged with the commissioner's office, and I was fiscal officer or administrative assistant and / compliance officer. It was real interesting because we had to do all the budgetary work, buy all the supplies, and we were doing it on a $100,000 a year budget. And believe it or not, there was a point in time that the money was so low, when somebody wanted a pencil, they had to turn the old one in. That's how bad it was. But we made do, set up a registration system for all the professional handlers of narcotics, plus other group of people, Bill Keister and Tipton. They ran the education section with the cooperation of the State Board of Education, their narcotics section. I got conned into going back into the fiscal section for a year by the first or second director, Richard Hervey, which I wasn't crazy about, but we had an agreement I'd stay there for a year until they found somebody. And that was interesting because we were there again, you're setting up new budgets, new supplies, whatever we couldn't get from OSBI, we got other ways. So it was interesting.
Did y'all still get along with the relationship like early on with OSBI after the?
You know, it was pretty good. There was some tense times, but I think it was because of the one person that was making or ordering them to give us more stuff than what we really needed or not needed or what they thought they were supposed to. There was a conflict between one person at OSBI and one person from the commissioner's office. But other than that, it went very smooth.
Now the equipment, vehicles, what did y'all have to work with back then, just to give today's agents a little appreciation?
I was just talking with Sosby about that. I would talk about his first car that came from OSBI. Was an old Rambler, four-door Rambler, that at one time we were traveling and we couldn't keep the door shut, the passenger door, so we stopped and got some baling wire. But it was pretty much that. There was a couple old beat up Ramblers and a couple seized cars that were really in bad shape, but everybody made do. And I can remember the first car we ever bought. It was a maroon Oldsmobile. And there was a fight over that first brand new car. And then we bought 3 Chevys that were nice. And gradually everything came around and I stayed there for about a year, and then Mr. Hervik was a man of his word and put me over, and I started in the compliance section with Charlie Ryan. And he and I, and Jim Puckett, pretty much ran that section for 4 or 5 years, and he assigned me to Lawton for a year to set up that office and get it running, and enjoyed that. You know, it was the Lawton Police Department worked so good in the sheriff's office with us. So I left after a year. I think I really only stayed 9 months. Then the next office we opened up was the Enid office. So I was assigned there and to run it, equip it, get the towers going, get everything done, and that was the best assignment in the world, just the best. And then, like an idiot, I had to put in for chief agent, where I should have just stayed as my agent 4, because you were out of politics and you were out of sight, out of mind. But I enjoyed every minute. Even the bad days were good days.
You had a couple bad days. Were you? Can you kind of talk about those days, where you were at, and a little bit about those two gentlemen?
Well, I wasn't there with Morgan.
Okay.
The first shooting was down by Lake Thunderbird. A guy by the name of Richard Curry and two of his buddies opened fire on Jim Puckett, and Mr. Curry died. None of us were hurt, thankfully. The next time was in Garfield County. I had been brought back to the city office because we were having problems in the fiscal division. So I was brought back and got the word over the radio that a dear friend of mine, Bob Burnett, the deputy sheriff up there, had been shot. And Archie Urich had been shot, but Archie had a vest. But I had people on the ground. And I was supposed to be running that office as well as the fiscal section here. So at this time, Tom Hagee was, I believe, was the director. And I went into him and he said, "You're not leaving." I said, "I'm not staying. I'm going." And he thought for a minute and he said, "Don't you get anybody hurt." I said, "Well, that's what we're kind of going to go up there and see." So then we got into a shooting there. Russ Higbee, Jerry Harris, and myself. And unfortunately, Max Walford, the bad guy, didn't make it. And then the third one was when Bill was killed out at Woodward. That one was something else, and nobody did anything wrong. It just happened. Bill lost his life, and my best friend's Lieutenant Chumley out there was shot in the chest and face with a shotgun, and one shot come in my direction, and they found a buckshot in the fence behind me because I had gone down in a kneeling position when I was firing. And Marcia Gale Boston, the woman that started this whole thing early that morning, was shot, survived, and the little maggot that shot Bill took off running but gave himself up the next morning. It wasn't something that haunts me to this day. I mean, anybody thinks you could just go out and shoot somebody and it's going to go away. It doesn't.
Bill had quite the reputation, not just in Oklahoma.
And took my position as agent in charge because I made a mistake and got into a fist fight at a bar. And Mr. Hagee reduced me in rank and cost me $200 or $300 a month. And bless his heart, all he really said to me was he shook his head and he said, "Didn't you get that memo?" I said, "What memo?" He said, "The one that says you can't do that shit no more." And I said, "Yes." And then I loved working with Bill. I loved working with Bill. Was kind of like, I consider myself, you figure out different ways to do things that they can't figure out that you're coming at them, you know. And so we got along great together. I mean, and after Bill's passing, then I got sent back to my old place.
Talk just real quickly about what was the most effective way to bring down some of your bird?
Well, it was horrible at first. I mean, because you just did what you had to do. And it's like Thomas said, and you know, the favorite bus signal was get to the switch by the door and flash the light. Or if things got really tense, throw a chair through the window. And what Sosby heard him say about the dog deal, that was we were sitting on surveillance and we heard a gunshot, and then we saw the informant run out on the front porch with a rifle, and we definitely knew something was wrong. So the bad guy decided to exit out the rear of the house, and I followed him and got him and threw him up on the garage. Little known that his German Shepherd was hot on my heels. Major conspiracies. Back when you were talking about amphetamine and stuff earlier than that, it wasn't like today where they could make it in the back seat of a car. I mean, these were professionals that knew how to make it. It took a long time to make. It took a lot of chemicals to make. And those I dearly loved. One I went to all the way up to New Jersey to track a 55-gallon drum of phenylcetic acid back, and we got him. He was out waiting to be sentenced on another manufacturing. Another one out of Enid that we did covered 5 states and was all filed federally, and everybody got their due rewards. But I enjoyed those kinds of cases. I enjoyed the cases you had to think. Cases, I remember one in Enid was a jeweler that was dealing coke pretty heavy out of his jewelry shop. And we tried everything to get to him. And so I thought, how are we going to do this? And I went into Hagee's office and I need about $1 grand's worth of diamonds. He said, what? I said, I need about $1 grand or $1,500 worth of diamonds. And I explained it to him what we were going to do, and he said, hell, let's give it a try. You know, there was another one that was a big old boy they called Tiny, and Tiny was a lot bigger than me. And he had worked for CID at Lawton. And him and I just were having trouble. He liked me, but he wouldn't deal to me. And finally one day I was over there and asked me if I wanted to have a beer, and I said, sure. And it was hot. And I said, I don't want this hot beer. And he said, well, the ice box is broke. I said, I just happen to know where I can get my hands on an ice box. So we did the deal for amphetamine for the ice box. But I kind of like to throw the quirk in it. Things. Like I said, the worst day was the best. Even when I was in trouble, they were good days. But one thing, if you go in before a disciplinary hearing, don't shave all your hair and beard off and walk in with a Bible. I thought it would be funny. The disciplinary board did not think it was funny. I said it was good for all the other defendants I've arrested. I thought I'd try it on you all. That didn't work too well. It was time to leave. I had another job.
Any regrets?
No. Well, the only regret is, and I was serious about that, is I wish I would have just stayed at Enid instead of coming in as chief agent. That's the only regret. Other than that, I still drink coffee with a bunch of the guys in Enid that were assigned to us. And the other good thing about it is get to knowing everybody in law enforcement. I had a quarter of the state, and I knew every sheriff, every DA, every deputy, and it was enjoyable, but I don't miss it.
Where you stand.
Now,
Don't try it. No, I was there.
The worst part of the whole thing is we went to court in federal court. Here's these 2 huge monitors. And I know what's coming. So I'm just sitting there with my head kind of hanging down, and I hear, "I'll blow you where you sit." And I look up at the jury, and they're all doing one of these things. Hey, you get a little confused. We were both sitting in the car.
Hey, we were trying to do surveillance. You cannot do surveillance and guffaw at the same time.
It worked, though.
Mission accomplished.